Hello and welcome back. Today we are talking about objects, specifically how to create objects. Now, objects, what are objects? To describe them in English, we would say they are keys and values, key value pairs, or as you'll see down here, I have a table because you can think of objects as being rather tabular, as representing tabular data. So for instance, if we want to represent data that goes together. Let's say a cat, like this example. We have a cat that has a name and a job and a favorite subreddit. We could also have a person to give a more plain example, but also a more realistic example. In a database, you might have users, and each user might have a name, they might have an email, and they might have, say, a level of progress within your programming course. So that is something that all of you logged into here also have. So it's generally tabular data, and you can imagine we could have a large table of a bunch of different cats here. Just like in a system, you generally have a big table of a bunch of users, and we can represent each of these things with an object. So this is just one way of looking at it, and this is not a perfect analogy, so I would say take this with a grain of salt, but it might be useful when we're first starting out with objects. You can think of it as a row in a table. So let's go ahead and create this. To create an object, we use the curly braces. So you might remember that to create arrays, we use these square brackets or square braces. To create an object, we use curly brackets. And when we open them up, what we need is keys and values. So let's go ahead and add these keys. What are the keys? They are the table headings in this example. So we would have a name, and after a key, you add a colon, and then the value that you want. So in this case, it's going to be a string, and the name is going to be mommy, and then we keep on going. So the comma is also necessary. If we omit it, you'll see we'll get some syntax errors here. This cat has a job. His job is napping, a very, very prestigious job for cats. You'll see we have a syntax error here. Expected a comma. So that's what we were talking about earlier, just now. We need that comma there to separate our key value pairs. And next we want a favorite subreddit. So we are going to add favorite subreddit. And assuming we spelled that correctly, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because that is a lot of characters to type. Copy and paste, and let's run it and see what we get. All right. So we have should not be null, should have name of mommy, should have a job of napping, and should have a favorite subreddit of blah blah our cats. So this is not passing. What's going on here? Let's see. Let's add that. Got it. So just forgot the trailing slash, and that's the nature of strings, is that they have to be exact. But we got it, and so there it is. This is how you create an object. Now, if you're still here, let's just go through a few more examples. Again, let's go through the plain user example. We can have a user, and user has an email with the excellent email of blah at mailinator.com. And a user has a name, blah with a capital B. And a user has, let's just call it progress score. A lot of S's in a row there. And we'll just say it is 47. So this is another example of an object. And you don't have to have 3 keys, of course. They could just have an email property, just an email property, nothing else. They could also have other things like we can have something like address and an address. So what I want to show you is we can nest these things, objects that can be nested. An address could just be something like street address, which be 123 Main Street, and city, and etc., etc. But another way you might do this is to have a nested object where you have an address, and we'll say street 123 Main Street, classic address. In the city, called city. Let's just call it, we'll just call it city. We don't need to start making references to things in here. And city, street, country, etc. So this is an example where you would have an object within another object, and this is extremely common. So you, as with many things in this course, you don't have to just try to remember this necessarily. We will be going over things like this again in other challenges, so you'll get some more exposure to it. And especially when you do your own projects, you will be using data, and because you're using data, you will likely use some nested data like this. All right, that is all for now. See you in the next lesson.